I started my fourth round of chemo yesterday, and I wasn't sure it was going to happen. So I just had started my fourth round of chemotherapy, which when this round is over in 3 weeks, I'm halfway through my treatment, which is quite a milestone. I wasn't sure I was going to get through one cycle, but it was interesting though, this past Friday, I wasn't sure I was going to get this round. Those of you that follow me on Facebook or on Instagram know that I was in the emergency room on Christmas Day. And what had happened was I wasn't feeling very well the few days prior to Christmas. Hate to be graphic, but was having some issues with diarrhea and just wasn't feeling well. And my fever started to spike a bit on December 23rd and was actually up to 99 point something, I don't remember what, the 23rd, Sunday the 23rd in the evening. What they suggest is that if your temperature goes above 100.5, excuse me, if your temperature is 100.5 or more, that you need to call the doctor or go into the ER. Actually, Christmas Eve morning, there was no fever, and I was very happy because I really wanted to go to Christmas Eve services at my church. Took my temperature about a half hour before we were supposed to leave and saw that it had spiked all the way up to 99.9. So I didn't get to go to Christmas Eve services. That evening the temperature came down again, and then I was just looking forward to Christmas morning because we go to my mother's and have Christmas breakfast there. Unfortunately, when I took my temperature, it was up to 100.6. So I called my chemo-oncologist office, and the on-call doctor said, you need to get into the emergency room so that they can check your blood and make sure you don't have neutropenia. They said if the white blood cell counts were bad, that they would have to admit me. So really wasn't too happy, but ended up going to the emergency room. And after several hours there, they had taken a chest x-ray because I also had developed a cough, took my blood, and did the counts and came back with what they said was good news and bad news. The good news was that I didn't have neutropenia. My white blood cell counts were okay. But what they did say was they diagnosed that I had a little bit of pneumonia in my right lung. Now this I'm very skeptical about. I honestly do not believe I have pneumonia. And the reason being is this, that throughout my scans since surgery, I have had what's called a pleural effusion on my right lung, which is fluid that builds up on the outside of the lung, not the inside. The fluid has slowly been diminishing, being absorbed naturally. But what this does, it does collapse a part of your lung. And I told the ER doctor that, and he went back to the radiologist, and he called back, or he came back after a while, and he said, well, they still seem to think that it's that there's something more there than just the fluid buildup. And so he said, you definitely have some sort of infection, so we're going to give you these antibiotics. Well, the antibiotics they give me are great for pneumonia, but they aren't do anything for anything else. So now I'm stuck on this 10-day course of antibiotics, which also affects my stomach and makes me feel crappy. And now, since I had the chemo on Friday, I'm now on what I term my bad week, which is where I feel the worst, I have the most nausea, and the most fatigue and everything else. I did go in and speak to my chemo-oncologist, before I had the chemo, he had to do a checkup, which he does every time before we start a cycle. And I told him about what happened, and he wasn't even updated that I was in the emergency room. He took a look at the records, and I told him about the pleural effusion, and he said, well, let's listen to your lungs. And this was the part that drove me mad, was that nobody in the emergency room listened to my lungs. And when the chemo oncologist listened to my lungs, he said, well, you definitely have an issue on that right side. He said, but it does not, to me, sound anything like pneumonia. It's probably the fluid buildup, which is collapsed part of your lung. So I knew that, and it just goes to show that you really have to coordinate your own health care as you go through this, especially when you have doctors that are at different places and through different medical systems. When I talk about my chemo-oncologist, I'm talking about the oncologist who is responsible for administering my chemo. This is not my sarcoma specialist, which belongs to Northwestern University Medical System in the city of Chicago. He is working with my chemo-oncologist to have the chemo administered, but my sarcoma specialist oncologist is with a completely different medical system. And of course, sharing records is a pain in the neck. So all my CT scans are done at Northwestern, and I have to bring discs and reports with me to all the other doctors I see, which are part of a medical system called Advocate here in Chicago. So it shows that you really have to take control of everything that happens and make sure that everyone is talking, because they don't always talk. A funny note on the pneumonia side, though, was the last time I had my CT scan, which was just on December 4th, and my sarcoma specialist had mentioned that the pleural effusion was reducing a little bit, and my partner had said, when does somebody call that pneumonia? And the sarcoma specialist laughed, and he said, only a bad doctor would call that pneumonia. And so when I got this pneumonia diagnosis, I kept thinking, oh my God, dude, is the emergency room doctor a bad doctor? Well, he's only working with what he has and what he knows. And so no, he's not a bad doctor, but he was working off an X-ray, not a CT, and they never listened to my lungs, which he should have done. That seems pretty basic. But in any case, you gotta watch out for your own medical scheduling, your own make sure that everybody has what they need in order to make a proper diagnosis, and don't be afraid to question. I kept questioning this guy and kept saying, this doesn't seem right, I don't think I have that. And he said, well, based on the cough and based on your fever, that you are definitely fighting something, so we're gonna put you on the antibiotics. So even my chemo-oncologist said, yeah, they started you on the antibiotics, you might as well finish the course because it could do more harm to stop it in the middle, which is true. You don't want to stop antibiotics in the middle of taking them because that can cause a resistance to drugs. So in any case, here we are. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. The good news is I'm feeling pretty good today. The biggest thing that's hitting me is fatigue. I took a shower this morning and really needed to just lie down, and I slept for 2 hours. So the fatigue is hitting me hard. I don't feel all that nauseated right now. As a matter of fact, I just ate a little bit of lunch, so I have a tiny bit of an appetite, and I'm hoping tomorrow will go well too. I don't plan on being up at midnight, but you never know. So I'm wishing you all a very happy 2019. I hope your New Year's is fantastic. And if those of you who haven't, please feel free to subscribe if you want to get notified for new videos. Hit subscribe and hit the bell. You can also follow me on Instagram at Dave's Fight Crew. I tend to just do little updates maybe during the week on Instagram. But hope everyone is well. Thank you for watching and have a great day.